Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of The Big Shift. My next guest has a fascinating story. His father, half-brother and cousin were unfortunately murdered in a famous mob hit back in 1995. I'm going to introduce this special man in a minute. Hi guys, nice to see you here again. God bless, and I hope you're okay out there. Everything's going well for you. On The Big Shift, we have unbelievable stories of endurance, adversity, and fascination. One of the wonderful things the Big Shift team like to put out to you guys is the solutions to a lot of ways of life. My next guest has an unbelievable story of adversity. He was a mafia capo in the Philadelphia mob, which is still one of the most active mafia groups in the country, guys. He has an unbelievable story of transformation. We're going to get to that in a minute. But listen, thank you all the guys who are going into the subscription model and, go in there and buying the book, The Monkey Puzzle Tree. It's definitely our aim to empower you guys and get you forward on your own exponential journey, so thank you for that. So look, I'm going to go straight into it now. My next guest is a wonderful Bobbyluisi. Hi, Bobby. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Steve. This is a great show. I've been watching you for a little while. I'm really honored to be here with you.
What was the change? I mean, your father, he was a known, notorious figure of them days, organized crime figure. But did he dissuade you from the life, Bobby, or did he want you to do something else, or did he want you to follow in his footsteps?
Maybe in the 90s he did. But earlier on, he never pressured me to, do anything but go to work. I think my father would have been proud of me either way, whatever I did and decided to do. At an early age, I seen what the life was like. Watching these guys sitting there, seeing what was going on, and I just felt it wasn't for me at the time. My father didn't try to persuade me either way, but I'll tell you a story. We were 17 years old, and me and my cousin Paulie did something for one of the wise guys. And when that was done, they sent us to Vegas because Patriarca used to have a piece of, Raymond Patriarca, the boss of the New England family, used to have a piece of the Tropicana. We're 17 years old. They're flying us down there and we're gambling and all the excitement, So there were perks being around them, Steve. But like I said, after that, my interest started to wane with organized crime. I really didn't want to be involved in it. It was good enough to be Bobbyluisi's son at the time,
No, I get that, Bob. Here's the thing. We go forward a little bit. You're a capo, you're a main man, and you're a capo. So this is a little bit forward. So let's go back again for the audience, to give them dots and join the dots a little bit. You would have been exposed to this life. You would have known what this life was like, as you said. Specifically, you would have known it was a violent life, and violence was used in it. And those who were violent prospered, really, or they needed to have that in them, pretty much.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Are you a violent man? I mean, then, Bobby, was you a violent guy then? Did you take easy to violence?
Well, I used to put a front on, Steve, and I was very violent and ruthless in my own way. I had a little of that Machiavellianism in me with manipulating people. I went on the street. I had no problem with murder, the other things that came with it. I knew that was part of it. I mean, I didn't sign up to the mob to become a murderer. No one wants to do that, but, you have the capabilities to do that. I think that guys in my position maybe have some problems, maybe stemming from childhood or whatever, and, I didn't grow up with my father. He got remarried. My mother did. I grew up in East Boston. He was in the North End. And I don't think I had that father figure there. And I was looking for something more in my life. And I felt like Cousin Oscar could do that for me.
No, I get that. I get that. I had the same experience. I was, in all intents, feral. I had to find my own way. And we want to belong. We want a protection. We want to, and if it shines and it's very cool, then it's even better. Right at that age, of course, right? But look, So back in the day of them days, I just want to, I want to get the dynamic a bit more clearer. You had Angelo, Bruno, right? You had that war, right? In the early 80s within that family. Nicodemo, Scarfo, of course, another famous old school die-hard gangster. A lot of murders around him, around his name. Did you know these guys? Did your father know these guys? Did you ever come across
I never met Bruno, and I never met Nicky Scarfo. Now, I'll tell you what happened. When I come back in the 90s, there was a war still going on. Frankie Salami had taken over the family, and his faction was moving in on everything. My father was friendly with Frankie and Jackie, so naturally I kind of fit into that mold there, In 1993, there was a murder of Richard Devlin, and that really sparked everything up again. At the point of that murder, 5 different factions came up in Boston, and we battled it out for a few years. I lost friends, I lost family members. A lot of the enemy got killed, and it was a bad time up there. It was also a bad time in Philadelphia because Joey Molino was taking over that faction from Stanford. That was the boss there at the time. So both Joey and I were pretty much going through the same thing. I mean, I wasn't in Joey's position, don't get me wrong, at that time. What happened in the 90s going through the war, I started building up my family, building up my business and my little empire. And I had a falling out with the Petriacca family at that time. And we're talking 95, 96, and I knew I wasn't going to get made. I was a proposed man in the Petriacca family, but I knew I was never going to get made in that family because I had a problem with a capo in the family. And at that point, I started looking out and I started reaching out to New York, and I was directed to Philadelphia.
Yeah, let me ask you about New York quickly there, Bobby, because look, I know at this time you reached out to people like Peter Gotti,
Yes, I did.
Who is the brother of John Sr.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know you reached out to them. You wanted to be in the Gambinos, right?
Well, what it was is I would have been happy at the time, I thought anyway, maybe to be a capo in one of these other families and straighten my crew up. That was my objective. But I really wanted my own family. And that was my goal, my final goal. So my friend Jerry Cormet, the Frenchman from Rhode Island, a bad guy, dangerous guy, and Jerry sent up Giggsy from New York, from the Gambino family, to talk with me. Now, Giggsy wasn't a made guy, but he was a proposed guy, and he was with Angelo, who was a one-time captain of the Gambino family. So between him and Angelo, he came up, he talked to me, he went back to Pete Gotti, and Pete told him to send a message back to me. He says, Bobby, there's another family up there. I can't, with commission rules, I can't do that. I can't come up there, and and I can't help you. So from there, I went to Philadelphia and I met Ralph Natali. He was the boss at the family at the time. He was the front guy for Joey Molino. And then after meeting Ralph, I went down and I met Georgie in Delaware, and then I ended up meeting Joey and the crew, and we just hit it off. I mean, a bunch of great guys down there.
So let me ask you. Let me take you back to the Gambinos a little bit, and ask you just to point on some mob history there. It's very prevalent at the moment. So at this time, I'm guessing John Gotti Sr. was in prison. Sammy the Bull-Gravano, he testified and he was being moved around. What was your view of what went on with these two guys at that time? Because I'm looking at the landscape, Bobby, right? Mm-hmm. And this is important as it translates into later days. What was your view of what went on between Sammy the Bull-Gravano and John Gotti coming just after that? What was your view about what went on between them guys and what was going on in the Gambino family?
Well, after what John and Sammy did to Big Paulie Castellano, what after they clipped him, all the smaller families were in disarray. Now everybody's going after their bosses. And this is what started in Philly and Boston mainly, in some other parts of the country. I wasn't crazy about either one of them, to be honest with you. I don't like what was done, but I understand why John did it. You know, John Gotti was a man's man. He was a boss. I mean, I have to give him all that credit. You know, then him and Sammy get pinched, and they're out of the picture, and the son and Pete's there at one time, you know, and I felt maybe at that time they had to put back together. Everything was going good with them. You know, you have to understand something, Steve. I'm 300 miles away in Boston. As soon as I'm a capo, I'm a boss. That's it. You know, there's no other way around that. I'm running my crew in Boston. New York's 300 miles away. I don't think there's a telescope that can reach me that far, you know? So I wasn't really concerned who I hooked up with at the time. But, you know, thank God when I went down to Philly, you know, Joey took me in. Joey took me in.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's just I'm trying to understand the dynamic, because this was important in the transition of the mob. This was a pivotal point, right?
It was.
You know, and if you was around them guys at that time, I'm just interested to know your view and the view of the street as it proliferated down. Because people say a lot of things now, Bob, you know, and a lot of them, they wasn't there, they don't understand it, and they're talking now. So I like to get a view of people who may have knew a lot more, right? Because this was a great change. So, I mean, at that time in your mafia career, this is another important point. What did you think about what Sammy Gravano had done? Because Sammy says that John wasn't straight with him. All is fair in love and war. This is what Sammy says, right? You know, I don't sit in no judgment on that. It just is. Who am I? But what was your view then amongst the guys of what was going on between them guys? Because it would have translated to your work and your protection as well, right?
Well, when Sammy flipped on a major boss, regardless of the circumstance, you know what we all felt about him, you know? And, you know, today understanding more, I understand why he did that, you know? John Gotti was a rough guy. He was a good guy, a half a fair guy, but he was a rough guy. And he posted too many things on Sammy. And I know about some stories from all my friends from New York, and it felt to me like he shook Sammy down a lot. He got his money from Sammy, he got extra money from Sammy. I think in a way, and I don't want to say it like this because Sammy was a man's man, but in a way he might have abused Sammy a little. What I think happened psychologically in this life, you know, when they got pinched, Sammy seen what he was facing. John wanted him to take all the blame. You know, all right, he's the boss, but who's this guy to do this? He was the one sitting in the office talking about all these murders. It wasn't Sammy, you know? And then he wants things to come back down on Sammy so he can go back on the street. What are we doing here? Is this Lagos and Nostra? Or is this John Gotti's world? You know? Yeah. And do I blame Sammy now for what he did? No, absolutely not. I think he did the right thing. You know, it's a shame he came out, he got in trouble again. But that, again, which I know personally, because I was with guys on this case, is that he got involved to protect his son. And he protected his son. And that's a man's man. And he went in and he did another 20 years, the poor bastard. See, the thing is, Steve, in this life, you know, it's not what it used to be. When I grew up in the 70s and the 80s around these guys, these were men, you know? And then it just turned into the Wild West in the 90s for us and for Philadelphia, you know? Now, New York, I got to tell you straight, I never really cared about New York. I don't care what they think, what they do. I grew up with old timers.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an expert on everything, Steve, but I know how this life works.
Yeah, you see, this is interesting because it reveals a lot. I certainly think about what the life was really like and how it's changed now. Is that, look, you know, there was them old school guys, and I've talked to people who knew what they was like, right? And, you know, you go forward a bit, you've got cases like the Trafficante family, you know, Palermo and all that. I mean, you know, the whole family turned after that. You know, It's like the beginning of the end. I think there was 40 guys that was lining up because once the towel is out in the ring and bosses are rolling and, you know, people are doing the serious work on the street are rolling, they're getting in there first. Of course, the whole rules have changed. You said, well, hold on a minute. You're not keeping to the oath that you get to me. Why should I keep my oath to you? That's so, right. Of course, the whole thing crumbles. There's a lot of people out there, they'll judge or they'll throw stones on, but some of them, they've never even lived a life like that. They don't know what it is to have to live like that and navigate a life like that. So, this is another way to reveal motivations and why, and, clear up some things and give some clarity. Because there's a lot of stuff out there. You got sammy'thebull'gravano now, people like Michael Franzese. I mean, I know Michael quite well. We do some work, and I've interviewed Michael as well. There's a lot of YouTube about them too, guys having to sit down. What do you think about that, Bobby? We'll talk about some names here now for a minute before we go back to some other stuff.
Well, like I said, I got a lot of respect for Sammy. God bless him. Mike Franzese is a great guy. I did an episode with him on Comedy Central in 2017. It was great, And, I go back and forth with Mike sometimes for Christmas, with the texting. And I got a lot of respect for both these guys and for what they did and what they're doing now. They lived a life, they were in it. Their lives were compromised a few times. And, and now they're coming out, they're telling their stories about, their past. And that people love to hear that, and I'm doing the same thing now. I got my show, the Bobbyluisi show, which that. And I really like these guys. I got nothing bad to say about them. I think they're good men.
I do too, Bobby. And look, we all get lost in this life. I have a story of my own, and people out there, they know that. But it's that we would change and we would do better for others, right. No one, is without sin here, Bobby, right? This is the first thing. We're on a journey here, right? A journey to find the truth, and certainly the truth of ourselves. So it is about others. So people who are improving other people's lives, they have my vote. Everyone has a past, including me. Make sure to subscribe, go into stephengillen.com and sign up for more wonderful content to expedite, help, and support you on your own personal journey of success.